This is problem 4.10 from our textbook, Microeconomics with Glenn Hubbard. It's going to be a quick overview of the economic impact of a tax and how it affects government revenue, producer surplus, and consumer surplus. So I've recreated the graph here that they have in the textbook, and they ask three basic questions about what this represents. So it's described as the following graph shows the effect of a tax imposed on soft drinks. Use this graph to answer the questions. The first question is, A, which area in the graph represents the excess burden deadweight loss of the tax? So the deadweight loss is what brings us away from our equilibrium and any area on the graph that does not go to the government, consumer surplus, or producer surplus. So we see that the supply curve has shifted up. And now we have a new price point. And this is at this point, we have a lot of letters going on here, but we can call that 0.1. I'll use numbers. And we'll call, we'll start with this one as 0.1 where we began. This is 0.2, and I'll just call this 0.3. So our price moves from 0.1 to 0.2. So our consumer surplus is just A. Everything beyond what they don't have to pay. So beyond 0.2, so just A. Originally, when it was at 0.1, the price, this was the consumer surplus would have been A, B, C, and D. They would have had all this area as surplus. Basically, all these people who were willing to pay more for this good, soft drinks in this case, but didn't have to. So that is disappeared because of the tax. Now the tax has increased the price. On the other hand, the supplier is only getting price up to this point. So we can call that, it's not marked on here, but let's call it P3. So now their surplus is represented by H and I together. They only get this area of surplus. The reason that both has decreased is because the government is taking a chunk. The government is taking, through their tax, a big chunk. And that is going to be represented by this rectangle here. So E, F, C, and B, all of this is what the government takes as their revenue. And that's just the amount of the tax, the vertical distance between the two supply curves, and the quantity, the new quantity. So quantity 2 on our graph is captured here. And that leaves D and G, these two triangular pieces here, that don't go to anybody. They're just gone because we are not at equilibrium. We're here at this point where people are buying less than the market wants to produce. So this is all just lost through economic inefficiency. And that is the nature of imposing a tax. Some taxes will be more efficient than others depending on how small this area is. The smaller it is, the better. So to answer the question, which area, that would be D and G equal our deadweight loss, or this book also likes to refer to that as excess burden. So the burden that it puts on the consumer and the producer, or another way to look at it is economic inefficiency, because we're just losing the surplus altogether. All right, to the next question. Next question asks, which areas represent the revenues collected by the government from tax? So I kind of got into that a little bit. The government will collect the amount of tax times the quantity sold. So that would just be however much is sold multiplied by that tax. So since a rectangle, if you were to get the area of a rectangle, you're just going to multiply quantity times price. We see that that rectangle gives us exactly the same thing. So we see it graphically, even though you might calculate it numerically if we had numbers. So this rectangle we see is captured by B, C, E, and F. So B plus C plus E plus F will equal the government revenue. So that's how much money they collect in taxes by imposing this tax. Okay. Lastly, would this tax on soft drinks be considered efficient? Briefly explain. So now, like I said, imposing a tax always results in some loss. and some deadweight loss, and some excess burden, as our book likes to call it. However, to be considered efficient, we want to make sure that the government revenue is larger than the deadweight loss. And as we can see here, and again, this is of course not to scale, but it's pretty obvious that the government is collecting a lot more than we are losing through deadweight loss, through the excess burden. So it's safe to say in this example that this tax would be considered efficient because the revenue is greater than the burden.